We're going to start this year with some basic definitions that we use to build everything in this geometry course. First thing I want to talk about are what are called undefined terms. Okay, and items in this lecture that need to go into your vocab book, I'm going to underline in purple. Anything in lectures that need to go into your postulates and theorems book, I'm going to underline or I'm going to mark it in red so you know that it goes in there. So this needs to go in your vocab notebook, okay, for the section 1.1 vocab. So I'll go ahead and put that up here. This is section 1.1. So you can put all your vocab on the same page. Just make sure that you underline the term or have some way to identify where your vocab terms start and end. So undefined terms from your textbook have no formal definition. But are agreed upon by what they mean. Then we have defined terms. And these defined terms are a formal definition that is usually built from undefined terms or other defined terms. So basically, I start out with things that are undefined, and I use those things that I generate that everybody agrees on are our basic building blocks, and I use those to start building up definitions. And as I build up definitions, I'm going to be able to do more things. A big portion of this geometry class is to teach you about logical reasoning and how to logically set things up. And this is our first step here. So our first undefined terms that we have are point. Okay. So key things about a point. It's an object with no dimensions. So it has no length, width, thickness, or height. Okay, no dimensions whatsoever. It is represented by a dot, and it is labeled with a capital letter. For example, the point A, I would use an A. It has a dot here, I'd put the A there. And there's Miss Nerot. Say hi to her.
Oh, I'm wearing the shirt Natalie got me for Christmas.
So that's a point. Next thing we're going to talk about is a line. And the words that were on her shirt is going to be a quiz question, so make sure you remember those. You can go back to the video and see them again. A line is an object with one dimension and that dimension is called its length. Okay. It extends forever in both directions. It's represented by what you have this straight line with two arrowheads on the end of it. There are multiple ways to name a line. Okay, it is named with the line symbol and 2 points on the line. Okay, so if this is my line and it goes through AB, I could call it line AB. Okay, I could also call it line BA. And sometimes lines have lowercase letters, so I'm either going to name it with 2 points on the line, or with a lowercase letter. Okay, for example, a lowercase m, I would call that M as its name. Okay, so points have capital letters, lines can use lowercase letters, or 2 points that are on that line. Next thing that we want to define is collinear. So this is actually a definition. This goes in our definitions too. So collinear. Collinear are points that lie on the same line. And this is in an order that's different than your textbook, and the reason why I'm doing this is because my next definition is going to talk about things. And let's go back to line really quick. I can define a line with any 2 points. Okay, as long as the 2 points are not the same, any 2 points that exist, I can define a line between those 2 points, or that go through those 2 points. Our next one is a plane. A plane, so if I started out with 0 dimensions and I went to 1 dimension, a plane is an object with 2 dimensions. What you can do is you can think of a plane as a flat surface that extends forever. So for example, it can be like a wall that goes up forever, down forever, to the left forever, and to the right forever, or a floor. So a plane is a surface. So it's a 2-dimensional surface. So I'm going to write 2D surface that extends forever. And the way we can name a plane by using 3 non-collinear points. Now I will tell you, through any 2 points out of those 3, you're always going to be able to have a line, but at least one of them has to be non-collinear. For example, if I have the points A, B, and C, notice I cannot draw a straight line through all 3 of them. I can use those to define the plane, and I would call that plane A, B, C. Okay, so we've used our undefined terms, and those were point, line, and plane. Next thing I want to talk about is coplanar. These are items, and it can be points, they can be lines, they can be the next things we talk about, rays and segments. So items that lie on the same plane. So that gets us through some basic definitions and our undefined terms. The next thing our textbook talks about are our defined terms. Okay, and again, all of these defined terms need to be in your vocab book. Okay, they should also be in your notes. So the first defined term we are going to talk about is a segment. So segment. Another way you may have heard about this in the past is as a line segment. Okay. It consists of two endpoints and the portion of the line between them. Okay, so if I had line AB, so that was line AB. So I used the line symbol. That encompasses everything going on forever in both directions. What the segment talks about is this region that I am putting in that dotted purple. Okay. The symbol is a straight line with the two endpoints. And I name segments with the two endpoints. And those two segments can be in either order. Those two endpoints can be in either order. I can call that segment AB or I can call it segment BA. It does not matter. If I want to talk about the length of a segment, I'm either going to put a lowercase l with the associated segment symbol, or I am just going to put the 2 points down without the L and without the symbol. So I could write this as AB, BA. So what this is telling me is I want the distance between points A and B, I want the distance between points B and A, or I want the length of segment AB or the length of segment BA. They all mean the same thing. Do not put the lowercase l if you don't use the bar across the top. And if you want to mean the length of the segment, not just the picture of the segment, make sure you have that lowercase l if you are using the bar on the top. Next item I want to talk about is array. Okay. A ray goes on forever in one direction. Okay? So a ray has an endpoint. And it will go on forever. In a single direction. The endpoint of this ray is the point C, and it goes through another point. So all rays, in order for me to write them down or to name them, I need 2 points. The first point is always going to be the endpoint. I use the symbol, it's an arrow, with the first point is always the endpoint. So this point right here is the endpoint. And this point right here is another point that the ray goes through. Okay? Next thing I want to talk about are what are called opposite rays. Okay. Opposite rays are two rays. Actually, I'm going to add a word here. Two collinear rays with a common endpoint that point in opposite directions. So collinear means they're on the same line. Okay, so a point in common would be if I have ray BC and I have ray BA going this way. Those would be opposite rays. They are collinear. They have a common endpoint, and they point in opposite directions. Okay? And the way you know you're going to be able to have opposite rays is any time that that common endpoint is between the two other points in a segment that are there. Okay? So that's our basic definitions for this section. And what I want to do is I want to draw some pictures so that you can get used to how these things work. Okay? So I want to draw things that are called intersections. An intersection are where two objects touch each other. Okay? So let's talk about the intersection of two lines, segments, or rays. Okay? So two lines. Two lines intersect, and their intersection is called a point. So two different lines intersect at a point. Okay, segments have a couple different possibilities. Okay, segments can intersect at a point. They can intersect to form another line segment. Okay, and that's if they intersect at a point in common and they're collinear. And segments can also intersect at that common point where they're not collinear, and they're going to form, again, their intersection is a point. Here, the intersection is a point. Okay, but they just form different shapes. All those intersections are points. Okay, rays, two rays that intersect can intersect like that. They can intersect like that. But again, the intersection of two rays is going to be a point regardless of what shape it forms. Okay. Let's talk about the intersection of a plane and a line. So I have that plane. Well, if the line is coplanar, the intersection is going to be a line. So if coplanar, I have a coplanar line, then the intersection is a line. Now, another thing I can do with a line, or a ray, or anything like that, is if I can have something that goes through it. That's the way I would draw it. So think about this piece of paper. If I had a line that went through it, okay, so if I poked a hole in here and had the line that go through it, its intersection would be a point. Okay, now let's talk about intersection of two planes. So I told you planes can think of flat surfaces that extend forever in both directions. So a plane is like a wall and a floor. If I have a wall and a floor that intersect, what is the point of intersection here? That point where they intersect is going to be actually let's do this here, behind, and they intersect here, it's going to be a line. So I'm going to grab a couple pieces of paper. So if you think about this, so if this part right here is the up and down portion, think of it as a wall. The front and back portion where these two planes intersect, think of that as the floor. So you kind of see it like this. Well, the point where they intersect like this, that is a line. So two planes intersect to form a line. Okay? So two planes intersect to form a line. Okay, and we can name that line of where they intersect. Okay? So that's it for section 1.1. Most of the stuff that I covered in the notes needs to be in your vocab book. And make sure that you go back and study these vocab terms, because part of your quizzes and tests actually do cover vocab directly, either as matching or I actually give you the term and you have to define it for me. So again, no arithmetic or math associated with this, just a lot of definitions. Make sure you know those definitions.